Good morning, sisters, and welcome to Promises and Attributes, episode 21. Today we are going to revisit the attributes of patience and humility. All of these attributes are so closely knit together, and there's just so much about each one of them. So I just had some other thoughts to share with you about those two specifically, and how they go hand in hand also with trust. Many of you know that I serve my mission in Paris, and one of my very favorite museums in Paris is called the Musée de l'Orangerie. And it's this little tiny museum that's kind of tucked away, like it's not far from the Louvre and the Musée d'Orsay and some of the bigger ones there, but it's a little one that many people don't know about. And it actually has some amazing like impressionist and post-impressionist works that lots of people really are drawn to. Anyway, in the basement of this museum, there are two oval rooms, and there are like benches in the middle of the oval, and then like on every facet, like, so there are doorways, but like then there are four sort of walls where there are just beautiful murals of Monet's water lilies, and they're painted at all different times of day and in different seasons and everything like that. And I just love this spot because it is so cool. You can get up really close to some of these paintings and just, I'm in awe. I'm in awe all the time. When I get up close, I'm like, how did Monet know? Like, how did he understand that if he put those two colors together in blobs? Because I don't know how many of you are familiar with Monet's paintings. Most people are, but like, he just painted color, basically. He didn't paint shapes, he painted color. And somehow, as he like put these different colors together as he saw them and like painted, you know, these just, it looks kind of abstract when you're up close. And sometimes I would look at it and I'd be like, why did he put brown there? And like, that is just so globby and it looks like a huge mess. And in some places it looks scribbly, like a 5-year-old did it. But when you step back, it's like amazing to see the whole picture that he is able to create with those blobs of color and those things that maybe sometimes don't seem like they fit. And I have probably shared this analogy before, but I liken that a lot to our Heavenly Father and his ability to see how everything fits together. And we might look at it and be like, what in the world? Like, why did you do that? And how come this is here? And why this doesn't look good at all? Because our perspective of things is so small compared to his. We might be standing right up next to that painting and only seeing the globs and the scribbles and not really seeing any shapes take form. And it's only as we can step back and see with God's eyes the things that he has in store and the things that he sees, that's how we can then come to see the beauty of what seemed to be chaos and what seemed to be mess. And I think that this is an important thing to remember when we have to exercise patience and humility in our lives. Like, to remember, like, I might not understand or like be able to figure out these blobs or these like mess of color or these scribbles, but God's got a plan and he gets it. He sees the whole picture. He sees the whole painting. I'm sure Monet had to like step 10 feet back sometimes to look at his painting and to see if, you know, the colors made sense together. And, you know, sometimes we need to take that step back from our lives too and try and see things as God is seeing them. And that patience and humility that's required and that trust can be really challenging at times. I was thinking through this and thinking about how many times in my life I have been prompted to do something or felt a desire for something, and it has taken a long time for it to come to fruition. I've probably shared this story before too, but I learned French for 9 years before I went on my mission. And I started loving French when I was like a 7 or 8-year-old kid. I remember my babysitter came to our house. She was studying French or doing a little bit of homework or something, or she brought homework to do. And I was like, speak to me in French. And she said a couple words. She was kind of embarrassed, like naturally, but she said a few words and I was like, oh my gosh, I love French. I need to learn French. And I was like obsessed with it. And so as soon as I got old enough to go to middle school, I was like gonna take French, and I took French all through middle school, all through high school. I took for the 3 years before I left on my mission in college, and I just ate it up. But isn't that interesting how long that took? Like, I had no idea as a 7-year-old kid that thing, that interest in French was going to lead me to where it has. And I look back at that and I'm in awe that God prepared me, even as a 7 or 8-year-old kid, for a mission that I would serve so many years later. And it helps me realize that he understands the timing of things. Shelby and I dated a little bit in high school. Well, a lot in high school, but not like you would think. Most people, when they hear that we dated in high school, are like, oh, high school sweethearts. That's not how it went. We dated and then broke up, and then we wanted to be friends again, and then we dated again and then broke up, and then we wanted to be friends again. And he broke my heart a few times in high school. Anyway, I remember, so he went to the U and I went to BYU, so we kind of thought that our paths would never cross, but I got my mission call. No, he got his mission call to France while I was on study abroad in France. And so we kind of connected again after that because of France. And again, like, France kind of connected me and Shelby a few times too, which is so interesting, right? That even that time as a 7-year-old kid, like, I never even thought about that. Anyway, and then I stopped writing him on his mission. That's a long story. But while he was on his mission, I got my mission call to his same mission. And when I went to tell my French teacher from high school that I got my mission call to Paris, his brother happened to be in the class when I was there. No coincidences, right? Like, I'm sure God orchestrated all of this. But then, so when he got home, the very first thing he did was to call me, and we connected again. And we had 7 weeks in between the time he left and the time I left. And I remember thinking, why now? Like, why are we reconnecting again now? And I remember telling my mom, like, this isn't fair. Like, why is he, like, why are we on the same page now? And she's like, you don't need to go on your mission. You can stay. And I'm like, oh no, I need to go on my mission. And I knew that for sure. Anyway, it was interesting because I can't remember if it was at that time or another time. We looked at our patriarchal blessings, and both of them say, in due time, or in the Lord's time, that we would meet and marry the person, our eternal companion. And how much that played into things for us, that that it took time for all of that to come to fruition. That so many times along the way, I did not understand what God was trying to do. But in the end, it all made sense. There are so many things like that in life. I've shared my experience with you about 2 Nephi 8:3, about the experience I had in the temple, and feeling that scripture so strongly whispered to me that, like, God was going to be there for me in my wilderness. And that was a year before Shelby got diagnosed with cancer. God does things in his time and in his way. There's a story that Michael Wilcox shares about how he had a hard time with his dad and had prayed for a long time as a young boy, as a teenager, as a young man. Even when he started having kids of his own, he had daughters first, and it wasn't until he had sons that he had an experience that helped him to forgive and understand better his dad. So I guess his dad had left them when he was a very young boy, and that just always left kind of a hole in his heart. And it wasn't until he had sons of his own and prayed for that the Spirit said to him, like, would you rather be the father without the son, or the son without the father? And he was able to recognize that his dad had suffered so much, and he was able to see him in this different light. And he didn't have that experience or that ability before he had sons, even with just daughters. And so he talks about how it took such a long time for him to have space in his heart and his soul and his spirit to receive the answer that he received. And I love what Neal A. Maxwell says about this. He talks a couple of times about the importance of having a space excavated in our soul. He said the enlarging of the soul requires not only some remodeling, but some excavating. Think about that word excavating, like digging out pieces so that you can make way to build new things. And that's exactly what Michael Wilcox experienced, this excavating of soul. He says this also in a different talk. He says, there are customized trials such as experiencing illness, aloneness, persecution, betrayal, irony, poverty, false witness, unreciprocated love, etc. If endured well now, all these things can be for our good and can greatly enlarge the soul, including an enlarged capacity for joy. But that enlargement, that ability to be bigger and better than it was before, comes with this excavating, that comes with patient endurance. He said, meek suffering often does the excavating necessary for that enlarging. I love that idea. Sisters, I hope that when you come across things in your life where you just don't understand and it doesn't make sense, that you can remember that God sees all, that he sees how it all is going to work out. And sometimes, because God is a God of small, simple things, and here a little and there a little, and line upon line and precept upon precept, sometimes it takes a really long time, like 15 years to learn French or to be interested in French before you see the fruits of that labor, or 7 or 8 years before this person that you felt connected with ends up becoming your husband. Like, things take time, and the Lord's time is always the right time, even if it's hard sometimes for us to accept.